Welcome to my channel. We're going to start off with 2 dots to indicate where the eyes will be. Then we're going to move on to work on the edge as far as her head to try to start developing it more to help give an indication as far as where the eyes run with the side of the head as far as the eye sockets, because you want to make sure that everything is in line in the proper place so that we can start making sure the proportions are right and continue structuring it out. I'm going to continue to mess with the value next to the edge of the head and the hair to try to get a feel of how that hair flows down on this side of her head. So back to the eyes. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and start structuring the eyes out to get a gesture of what they look like. It's okay if one eye is higher than the other. The main thing we want to focus on right now is to continue to structure everything out. And the eyes is a part of that process, because on the planes of the head, the eyes have planes as well. They have a top plane and 2 side planes and the plane that's underneath it to give it that roundness that we're always searching for. As you can see, I'm not making the eyes round. I'm making it a plane and sloping down on both sides. The eyes, they are spherical, but to get the effect that we're searching for, which is 3D, we have to start off structuring, developing, and then moving on to finessing, which will give you that spherical look when it comes to the eyes. Oh, and don't forget about those dreaded edges. As I continue to sculpt the eyes, I'm not too concerned about if one is higher than the other, but I am worried about spacing. Spacing is very important, but I can always go back and adjust the eyes because oils is a very forgiving medium. You can't get any better than that. Now, the reasoning for the sculpting is for you guys to get in the habit of moving colors in and out of each other with confidence, knowing that when you work in oils, you work in opaque. So that means that a light color can cover a dark color can color a light color if you have the consistency of the paint correctly. So the idea is to be able to move the colors in and out of each other and develop. What I mean by develop is you feel for what it is that you're looking for. You search, you ask yourself questions. Is this the right value? Is this the right brush stroke to make this bridge of this nose the correct way? You're not going to get it the first time. The idea is to search forward. You don't want to go in like this way right here. I like to feel forward, which means that I'm not going to have a hardcore drawing and then go over the top of the drawing and then, build on that. The way that I like to do it, because it pushes me as an artist. I like to go in and develop the head as I paint. And what I mean by develop is the painting process. I'm drawing. I'm doing the art from beginning to end, searching again from beginning to end. For instance, Koa, when I first approached her, I approached her in a gestural form to get a visual as far as her placement on the canvas. Now, at this stage, I'm starting to structure her in to develop her head. Because in the beginning, I was using a number 8 Grand Prix Silver brush, looking for the big simple shapes. Still structuring, but I'm looking for the big simple shapes. Right now, I'm still using the number 8 Grand Prix Silver brush to structure her out. Still looking for the big simple shapes. Not trying to get detail, not looking for any detail. I don't want any detail at this point because I'm still structuring everything out, because I need to get a visual showing me that I am going in the right direction. So if you work the whole piece, you guys will see by working the whole piece, you can get a visual so that you can step back and look at it and say, wow, I need to make these changes. I need to go back and do this. I need to go back and do that. That's that confidence I'm talking about. So whether you have an area completed or not, if you need to go back in there, I suggest you go back in there, because it's all about building your confidence. Now, at this point, I'm stepping back and I'm looking at Koa. I'm looking at her saddle pattern. Remember, on Rotties, their pattern is called the saddle pattern. Now I'm looking at her pattern and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I'm going to continue to structure out her head yet again. Well, like I said, I'm really happy with the way the saddle pattern around her muzzle at the bottom of her head, it's looking pretty good. That's right now. But later it may change. No, I guarantee you it will change, because when you think it's on point, it's really not until you go in there that one last time to finesse it. Now, back to her head. Now I'm using a combination of dark and light values to help sculpt her head out, to give it that definition that I'm looking for. In the saddle area, I'm pretty much happy with what I have right now. Like I said, that is going to change. Right now, I'm just going to use the dark and light values to help sculpt out that head some more, to give it that definition. The colors I'm using on there is French ultramarine, alizarin, some burnt umber. I'm even throwing a little cerulean blue with some titanium white to give me the light and dark values that I'm looking for to help continue to structure out this head. Now, for video purposes, I do step in and out from the canvas a lot. So I'm like walking back and forth constantly. Now, when I step back and look at Koa's head, I can really see her head starting to develop structurally. I'm not finessing it yet. Structurally, her head is starting to develop, and I'm happy with what I'm seeing. Yet again, right now I'm happy. Later on, that could be a different story. But we're going to continue on in the direction that we're going to continue to develop Koa's head. Since we're on the topic of structure, it's one of the principles that gives form to your subject. So as you construct or build on the form, it helps to give it that 3D feel. As you can see, the pup head is starting to come to life from where I started after the first stage into the second stage. The more you practice this and the more you stay on it, you train your eye to see three-dimensional and not linear. At this point of the painting, this spot needs to be taken care of. I'm going to use this light value that I've been using to start to dress in this area right here, to go ahead and start bringing out Koa's head even more as I structure her right, our left side of the pup's face. As I continue to develop the muzzle, actually take some of the value or the color that I use for the muzzle and move it into the saddle area. And then I'm going to start to address the markings of her eyes. One of them I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I think I got to adjust it just a tad bit. Then I'm going to take that value from that marking and move it into the darker values on the side of her head to help try to get her head to turn a little bit. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 marks for the eyes. Just placement so I can gauge what it is that I'm doing. But the one thing I want to say at this point right here, keep in mind when you see the paint applied with the brush, you see how thick the paint is. That means that your brush should be loaded all the time, or at least most of the time. I don't know if we all keep our stuff loaded all the time like we should, because I know sometimes I'll fall short of that myself. But for the most part, you want to try to keep your brushwork loaded, because when I'm moving colors in and out of each other, they tend to blend well when I'm moving colors in and out, just like the marking over her eye. Remember, Koa's story is a fur. So as the artist, it's my job to try to get the brush strokes to read as fur. So far, I think I'm doing okay, but I still have to push a little bit more and dig and ask questions as far as, how to make or how to get the brush effect that it is that I'm looking for. Now, with that being said, we're going to start focusing on the saddle markings on her body and paw. At this point right here, I'm actually going to try to get the brush strokes to read as if this is her paw running down her leg. Because remember, let the brush stroke tell the story for you. Because when you paint these brush strokes, the idea is to get it to look like brushwork. But when you step back from it, everything falls into place. That, my friend, is known as the optimal viewing distance. Basically what it is, by me moving in and out of the canvas, that allows me to see things far back that I wouldn't necessarily see close up on the canvas, which allows me to give certain brush strokes. So when the viewer actually comes in to view the piece, it's going to look a certain way from a distance, but as they move in on it, that's when they will see the brushwork as far as how I was telling the story with the brushwork. So paintings of value, if you view them at a certain distance, it allows you to see the whole piece the way it was meant to be viewed at a distance. I would walk clean across the studio to view the piece at a distance. So when I get ready to put my next brush mark on the canvas, I know exactly what it is that I'm doing, because I don't need that much detail. So the brush stroke, the brush mark, is my voice on the canvas. As I continue to work Koa's body with the same pools of paint on the palette that I used on her head, because the question I always ask myself as I paint, am I going to take the path of least resistance, or am I going to take the path of growth? I've always chosen the path of growth because I get so excited from what I see on the canvas each time I paint. It's always something new. Now swoosh for the brush mark on Koa's thigh, so I can start to develop and structure and build on this thigh to give it the look I need for it to have. And then up around her rib cage, where her hand is holding Koa, I started to develop that area as far as her hand. But we're going to move on further. We're going to move on further with a mixture of French ultramarine, alizarin crimson, titanium white, going back to bump that in with some burnt umber, back to French ultramarine because I'm not feeling where the color is right now, then more titanium white to start painting in her belly. Now that I'm finishing up her underbelly, I'm going to add titanium white to this mixture to start structuring out the roundness of her belly. It doesn't feel right, so I'm going to go back and add a little more titanium white because I need to see her belly form to give it a three-dimensional feel to later define form. While continuing to build form, I'm going to move back to Koa saddle pattern because I want you guys to keep in mind the two principles I've been using to construct form are value and edges in this painting so far. First, values. Values is the lightness or darkness of a color or hue or however you decide to say it. But it's all about how the light hits that value to go together in a painting. Now, with that being said, this helps individual forms and objects with the arrangements of values and light to show their own shapes to construct. And that's why I do a lot of structuring, because I'm looking for the form. Remember, volume. I'm looking for volume, 3D, not linear. Now, let's talk about edges. I'm always talking about losing and finding edges. Since I'm working Koa's saddle pattern around her thighs, edges act as boundaries between two colors or two areas in a painting. For instance, you got her coat and her saddle pattern. You can see those edges right off the rip. You got the brown and the black. Some edges separate two areas that are so close in value that the exact boundary or the exact edge is difficult to see. And in that case, that's when the edge get lost. Now, most of the edges around Koa's belly and thighs are similar. As I continue to structure and build on her form, we can start to recognize individual parts of her body. Right here, I'm going to start to feel for the roundness of her belly. So I'm going to take the brush stroke in the direction as far as trying to get that stomach to show form and volume when I start to structure that area out more. But this right here is just an indication for me to see where it is I'm going. As I continue to structure out Koa's thigh that's closest to us, I'm stepping back from the canvas to get an overall view of the piece. Now I'm going to start to shape her thigh that's facing us with the background. So I'm just going to go with some burnt umber, yellow ochre, titanium white, and with some cerulean blue. Once paint is to canvas, I'm going to bump the background back with mineral spirits and paper towels while continuing the design of the vignette and mapping out Koa's leg. At this point, I'm moving in and out of the canvas more or stepping back so that I can get a better visual of the direction I'm trying to go. Now, let's approach the hand. I will start to model the fleshiness of the hand and start to develop the fingers to get a feel of how her hand drapes over Koa's body. Now, the bend of the wrist is very important. It has to feel natural. I don't want it to look stiff like someone just painted the wrist on a hand on a pup. Because when I paint this area, I'm looking for the wrist and hand to achieve a natural instinctive state that sparks emotion. That's what I'm trying to achieve right there. And the more I ask myself these questions, is the hand feeling feminine? How can I reinforce femininity in the hand and wrist? Are my initial brushstrokes, values, and edges still clear? These are just a few of the questions I ask myself during this painting process. Better yet, after this video, Google John Singer Sargent's hands, and you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Now, let's go back to modeling her hand with burnt sienna, yellow ochre, titanium white with a touch of alizarin crimson. Now, keep in mind, planes. I'm going to move this value in her hand, then down the side plane of her hand and finger. Here I see a warm value. I'm just going to place this marker here and come back to it later. Now that I see the hand starting to develop and that finger starting to come out, what I'm going to do now is go back with this value and add alizarin, because this area of the hands are usually warmer in value. And remember to not isolate that color, move it around inside that hand. Now let's move to Koa's head resting on her forearm. Here we are going with a warm value because there is a dark value between Koa's head and her arm. If we don't place that value there, it'll make her head feel like it's floating instead of resting on her arm. I'm going to take that same pool of paint on my palette and run it around her arm at the edge of her shirt. Now, at the back lower part of her arm, that warmth turns into a cool shadow. So I'm going to introduce some French ultramarine or blue to this warm value so I can cool it up and move it around the shadow area around the arm and the shirt because that area is cool. Now at this point, I'm standing back from the canvas to get a visual of the piece in its entirety. I'm going to stay away from the photo reference because I think the shadow side of her shirt needs to come down in value. I want her arm and Cora's head to be on a different plane, meaning I want her head and her arm to come forward while I push the shirt back, because this is where your artistic license comes into play. When you stand back from your artwork, you can make sound decisions to editing while reviewing your work. It can be a color change or even a brushstroke. So we're going to continue blocking this area in to bring the value down. Now with the same pool of paint, I'm going to add more French ultramarine to indicate some folds in her shirt. I'm just playing around right now, but it's to give me an idea where the fold's at. Then I'm gonna take that same value and run it back up her shirt, because remember, we don't want to isolate colors. We move colors in and out, and we move colors around the painting because we need the colors to go well together in a harmonious way. This gives you, the viewer, a sensation that the colors in that painting, or this painting in the case, are in the same space. Now we're going to take that same pool of paint on my palette and move it into her neck area. Then we're going to push that paint into Cora's ear to lose that edge. At this point, I'm still going off my artist instincts, staying away from the photograph. So let's take the light values on the sleeve down as well. And let's see how this plays out, because the degree of color on the shadow side I'm okay with. Now let's try the degree of color on this light side. Okay, now I'm starting to really question this decision, but let's push it a little bit more. Nope, no. Let's bring the degree of that color back up. Now I could have easily edited this out, but I think this is a very good lesson. Even the best of the best struggle. I'm not saying I'm the best, but we all struggle and make bad decisions when it comes to our artwork. I do it all the time. When people look at my artwork, they see me at the finish line. They don't see the process of the struggle of an artist. This is a question I asked myself, and I got my answer. Bring the degree of that value back up. Now at this point, I got the degree of my value back up. So let's start to shape her shirt sleeve a little, and then move on to transitioning the values in the shirt sleeve. Now I'm going to start transitioning my edges on the shirt. And what makes that easy is painting with the side of the brush, not the tip, the side, because a brush is not a pencil, it's a brush. It's meant to be painted with, not drawn. Now for the sleeve. See how I continue to use the side of the brush. I paint to develop the sleeve. Now here, I'm gonna be a tennis player. I'm just gonna take this brush stroke and move back with it. And remember, we want to continue to move color throughout. I don't care what color it is, move that color throughout, never isolate it. Move it right on up that value we painted earlier. So the reference shows light folds, low in value in the shadow area. So I'm just going to put 2 brush strokes there as markers to come back and finesse them later. So this area of the painting is going to be interesting. I already have a few ideas of what I would like to try to do. First, we already wanted to push the shadow area of the shirt back in order to bring her arm and Cora's head forward. Second, I want to bring Cora's leg and paw forward, so that means that the shadow area of the shirt will be pushed back while her leg comes forward. Third, I'll be moving Cole's fur color into the shadow area of the shirt to bounce colors in and out of each other to have a sense of harmony going on in that shadow area. Okay, so this light value from the shirt has a little of Cole's color mixed in with it, because even though we're working the shadow areas, we still want there to be a sense of color harmony moving in and out in that shadow area. Okay, up by Cole's leg, we're going to go ahead and start moving the shadow colors into her color, and try not to make it muddy, because it's real easy to make things muddy up in this area, right? As I continue to work this area as moving colors in and out, I'm going to also take this color and move it up into the lower part of her arm. So for me, doing a lot of plein air painting, I know instinctively that that color is being bounced on the bottom of her arm. I remember when I first started plein air painting, one of my mentors and friend, Dawn E. Whitelaw, she was talking to me about going out and paint to be able to see color, because when you plein air paint, there's an array of color out there. It's endless color, and it's all bouncing off of each other. So she thought it'd be a good idea for me to go out there and start plein air painting. So, I was feeling good about when I had first started, why not? So I go out there and painted, and I had I thought it was a nice landscape. So I brought it back to her, and she explained to me as far as me isolating colors, because I had a blue sky, green trees, green grass, but it was a different shade of green, but I had green grass and everything. And when she critiqued my piece, it helped me out a whole lot. I didn't see what she was talking about at first. I didn't see it at all. I heard what she was saying. I didn't see it, but I just kept going at it until I grasped what it was that she was talking about. I remember another incident when I was in her class, and we were talking about values. I can say and speak the words, and I can tell you the definition, but I didn't get the meaning behind it. So it took me a minute. So I think it was that third or fourth time I went out plein air painting, a light bulb turned on. And we as artists, we're going to always have these light bulb moments. So that's why we push ourselves, and we try to hang on to people who can keep us motivated and mentor us in ways that we couldn't even imagine. So by her being in my corner the way that she has, it has helped me a lot as an artist. And I've gravitated toward other artists who also helped me out, which I'm greatly appreciated for all of the people who I've ran across in this journey of art. Now I'm going back and transition more edges in the light area of the shirt sleeve. Let's go with cerulean, French ultramarine, titanium white, and yellow ochre, because her hair, skin, and koa have a combination of that color in there. To make sure I'm keeping in tune with my color harmony, I'm constantly asking myself, is there a general sense of harmony? I'm constantly looking for that, because not only am I trying to get a good painting out of this, I also want the colors to be convincing in this painting. Now I'm going to add titanium white to my mixture that's on my palette, and add a hint of cadmium yellow to bump up that color value on my palette. Now let's develop this shirt area around her arm and sleeve. I'm going to work the shirt sleeve, but I'm just looking to get the shadow mass. I'm not looking for any detail, because I'm still not interested in details. Even though I can see the details, but right now it's just not that important. Then I'm just going to connect that shape to the inner area of her t-shirt. In other words, I'm going to lose all edges around the back of her lower arm, because I'm calling it a day.